right. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining. I'm Sabrina, one of the co-founders of Calm Collective. And I think we're all, we all know why we're here. The topic of mental health has been very much on our minds since the you know what began. In the realm of work, we've had to question the way we work as the workplace shifts from the physical space to the virtual remote office, blurring our boundaries between work and life. We're working more hours than before, and we're feeling more isolated, away from our colleagues, yet always with the people around us at home, working from home. Burnout is on the rise, and plenty of us have been languishing as we wait for things to get better. At the same time, we're seeing more efforts from both organizations and individuals to make mental health a priority, to create the conditions for ourselves to adapt and thrive. So there is hope. Today, I'm really excited to speak with our amazing and very experienced panel. We have Joyce from Grab Financial Group, Vinod, the CEO of MoneySmart, and finally, Anita from MindFi, and she's the Chief Wellbeing Officer as well as a psychologist. So, I see someone saying hi, Anita. Very nice. So before we get started and get to know our panelists better, let's check in with ourselves before we jump into the discussion, shall we? So Clarice is going to share a Mentimeter question, so we can all, go to the site menti.com and enter the code 70 37 56 and 6, or you can just press the URL in the chat section, or use your phone and scan the QR code. And the question that you'll get or you see on your screen, and I would invite everyone to do this, even the speakers, is how are you feeling today? So, oh my goodness. I see a lot of tired and anxious. Some calm, good. Vinod, Anita, Joyce, what did you put in? You can unmute it. I think you can unmute yourselves right now.
I am good, and I'm very excited for this talk.
Great.
My two words were tired, which I think is that big word right in
That's
the
a
middle.
big
A lot
one.
of us are feeling this way. And then my other word, which must be very small, is inspired. I'm really inspired that so many of us have come together today to have this conversation. So that is inspiring to me. So I hope some of the rest of you feel the same way.
Yeah. Joyce, what were your words?
I see on over there, it's thankful, very thankful to have the time to be here with everyone in this call and just share our knowledge and insights.
Yes, thank you for sharing, everyone. All right, I think it's really clear that tired seems to be the huge word of the day, but it's nice to see that we also have some people sharing good and alongside anxious. Obviously it's been a very tough week, especially for those in Singapore. It's been a week of both bad and not so good news. So I'm glad that some of us are able to feel good despite all of that. And it's not a surprise to feel anxious and tired. We're close to the end of the day, so it's nearly TGIF soon. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the discussion, shall we? So, all right. So today's talk is really about how to thrive in the virtual workplace. I wanted to check in with our speakers a little bit more and find out how work from home has been for you since the pandemic began, and how did you learn to adapt to it? So maybe Joyce could go first.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So I think I took on to working from home in a very uneventful manner. But the longer the situation dragged on, I realized that I actually had a lot. Working from home meant that I was able to have meals with my loved ones, something that I wouldn't be able to do at the rate at which I work and spend time in the office. And so I think something that really helped me early on in working from home was just to really count my blessings. Yeah, I recall there was certain nights where it took me some time to fall asleep, right? And I would actually, in a few moments before bedtime, actually, yeah, just call out all the things that I'm grateful for. But I think one thing that I've learned through my practice in mindfulness is that change is inevitable. It's always there. And so actually the thing that has really helped me to adapt to the ongoing changes has really been to pay attention. Whether it's to myself, to how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and even to people that I'm interacting with via Zoom, right? Yeah, I think just paying attention, listening actively has really helped me to adapt to this new normal.
Definitely. And how about you, Vinod? How has it been for you working from home?
A bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. It's frustrating to have a young kid running around at home, screaming at the top of his lungs and having meltdowns while you're trying to do calls. So that part of it has been challenging. I think like many of us, I've also been kind of faced with just being completely zoomed out. Just from doing video calls all day, every day, I just feel exhausted for some reason talking over VC versus face to face. But I think similar to Joyce, I also appreciate the moments of being at home as well. Typically during break times, I have the opportunity to, spend time with my wife or my son. Those little 10-15 minutes here and there bring me lots of joy, and not something I typically do on a weekday, especially. So very fortunate to have that extra time at home.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really been, I mean, at least for me, it's been really helpful to practice gratitude on a consistent basis because like as you mentioned, having Zoom call after Zoom call, back-to-back meetings, and not having that breather has been really, really tiring. And at the same time, there are the nice special moments of just being able to work from home and having additional time to maybe sleep in or something, right? That's the thing that's been positive for me. But at the same time, we've also heard a lot of our audience share that they've been experiencing burnout, and of course, there's been the whole concept of languishing, right? I wanted to ask Anita, what do you think? Why do you think this is happening? There's obviously a lot of upsides to working from home, and as a human race, I guess we're able to like adapt usually, right? But why do you think this has been happening for us?
Well, let me start by just sharing for everybody, just in case some people are not so familiar with what burnout means. And I think languishing is a term that has only recently come into vogue. So burnout, specifically work-related burnout, is what happens when you've been experiencing chronic stress to the point where you now feel emotionally, mentally, and physically exhausted. So by emotionally exhausted, it means you have very little motivation or interest in your work. Mentally exhausted, you're very tired, you're constantly stressed. And physically exhausted, you have a hard time getting up in the morning, you have a hard time just physically, your body physically doesn't want to do it. So I think this is something that's been happening a lot. And I think a big function of this is that lack of distinction between your work life and your home life. I think there's a lack of boundaries. It's hard to disconnect. It's hard to switch off. And I think people find that they're constantly in work mode. They feel a constant obligation to reply to messages, to work at all hours of the day. And I think this disconnection, this lack of space, this lack of me time has been contributing to burnout. Now, the other thing that you mentioned was languishing. So languishing is a feeling of perhaps apathy, emptiness, monotony, almost a feeling of numbness towards your work. That sense of detachment where, again, you feel like you don't have much motivation, you don't have much interest in your work. And I think this is also just related to that sense of being very overwhelmed by your workload, being very overwhelmed by not knowing how and when to disconnect and how to manage expectations. So From what I'm hearing in my work as a psychologist, from people talking to me, burnout and languishing have been affecting a lot of people in the past year and a half of work from home that we've been experiencing.
Joyce, Vinod, have you been, hearing about burnout or languishing amongst your own friends or colleagues? How has that been?
Joyce, want to go first?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a people manager, I lead a team. I also am a business partner to an organization, and I've never had so much tears being shown to me or being shared with me as I had in the past year, right? There's just been a lot of conversations where people are really emotional, and also in a way very vulnerable to share with me how they are feeling, how this whole situation is impacting them. I think I've just never seen so much tears before.
Oh my, that's that must be a lot to handle. And Vinod, how about your teams?
I think a lot of people have been going through varied circumstances throughout the last 1.5 years. Some people have family challenges or family members. I think some of the most sad situations were really caused by stress, where family members overseas had COVID. I think I had 2 colleagues whose parents passed away from COVID, and they weren't able to go home to visit them, and that I think was really sad. So we just have to do what we can as an organization, as a friend, to just be there for them during some of these challenging times. But everybody is going through their own pain, and we just encourage people to share as openly as possible so that we can support one another as best we can during this time.
I think it's really interesting how, I think because of the past year, it's brought up so many more emotions amongst within us as humans, right? And it's really interesting how the role of the manager as well as the organization has now changed over time. So I would be really, really interested to hear your thoughts around that in a bit. I actually wanted to kind of go back to our topic of, how to thrive, right? So there's this whole spectrum of, okay, how do we survive and how do we support each other? And also, how do we actually adapt to this whole thing, and how do we then learn how to thrive, right? And in trying to understand that, or trying to paint a picture of thriving in the workplace or the virtual workplace, I wanted to find out from each of you what you feel thriving in the virtual workplace looks like. Maybe Anita, you could go first.
Okay. Thriving in the virtual workplace. I think a big part of that would be psychological safety. I think that's really important. So if people feel comfortable speaking up to their manager, sharing their thoughts with the team, then there's that clear line of communication, and it's much easier for an employee to share if they've reached their limitations, how they're feeling about their work, perhaps to set boundaries. I think a lot of employees are actually happy. A lot of employees care about their company and are happy to work and do what it takes to get the job done. But I think everybody has their own responsibilities to their families, their own needs that they need to take care of as well. And if an employee feels a sense of psychological safety, then it's easy to verbalize these and make sure that both the company's needs and the employees' needs are also met. So I think in order to thrive in the workplace, I think psychological safety is very paramount, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Joyce, what do you think about thriving?
I think a huge part of what I as well as others have lost in working from home, working virtually, is this sense of connection. Right. And I would say, at least for me, connection is important. I mean, I'm in HR after all. I do enjoy interacting with other people, and that whole sense of how we connect with one another has really changed. I think in the past year, I've spent a little bit more time than connecting internally. Right. I think this whole concept of understanding, how am I thinking? What am I feeling? How is that impacting my behavior? I've spent quite a lot of time doing that. And bringing it back to the workplace, I think what I've tried to do for myself is really to connect back to my purpose. You know, other than the salary, why is it that I get up every day to do the work that I do? Right? And I think that has been important for me, being able to make the connection to my purpose. And I'll share a very, very quick story, but I've been in HR for 17 years. I've never imagined that I would work for a financial services sector. It was just not a sector that I wanted to go into. And last year when I did a short, webinar that was organized in our office in my company, I actually realized that my purpose was very much about appreciating beauty. I do this a lot when I travel. I really love the beauty of nature. And clearly I had been feeling like, oh, I haven't been traveling for a really long time. I've missed hiking mountains and just missed that sense of connection to nature, right? And I thought, hey, if this is my purpose to appreciate beauty, how can I bring it to the work that I do, right? And for me, it was rethinking that and reframing it and setting a new purpose, which is let me try and appreciate the beauty of other people in the work, in the financial services sector that I'm in, right? And having that purpose for myself then gave me a new way to think about the work that I do, and I think also helped me to continue enjoying what I do and thriving, even if that sense of physical connection to people is lost.
That's really beautiful. How about you, Vinod? How has it been for you? What's the idea of thriving for you in your life or for the people around you?
To me, I think sort of putting the pandemic to one side, it's all about work-life integration from my perspective. So it's about how your work can support your personal life and how your personal life supports your work. And where a lot of us struggle when it comes to sort of boundaries and drawing lines is really when there's an imbalance of those two things, where you feel you are supporting work, but the work is not supporting your personal life, right? And that requires an environment of psychological safety where you feel safe to raise your manager when you have an issue or a need that requires you to be away from work for a period of time. So for me, I've always believed in work-life integration, that we try and do that as much as possible to support our team at MoneySmart to make sure they have that time off and take some of that downtime to take care of themselves and do what they need to do, while just being giving them the autonomy and responsibility to know how to manage their time to achieve what they need to do. I think it's the balance that I try and find.
What are your thoughts, Anita, on work-life integration?
I'm a big fan of it as well, because I believe that we spend so much time working that we need to do work that we find meaning in. And it's important to find a workplace that is also willing to support you. So from what Vinod says, it's not just about employees working for MoneySmart. MoneySmart also wants to support their employees. So I think finding a workplace with a philosophy that believes in supporting its employees is really, really important. And especially now in the pandemic, this shines through even more. You can really see that the companies that truly care about their employees are going the extra mile to make sure the employees have the resources that they need to take care of their mental health. And just throwing it out there that actually MoneySmart is one of our clients that actually uses the MindFi app, and we're very proud to be one of the resources that they use over at MoneySmart.
Yeah. We're definitely going to find out more about that. All right. No, it's really, really interesting that we've kind of started talking about the the organizational side of things and where their responsibility lies, right? So obviously there's a lot of responsibility to take care of ourselves and our own mental well-being and holistic well-being, right? But since work plays a huge part of our adult lives, how or to what extent do you think organizations have the responsibility to take care of their employees' well-being? Is there an expectation from employees these days, or is it what are your thoughts around that? Maybe Joyce, what are your thoughts?
So I think there's a huge expectation from employees, right? And over here, it's the expectations from employees to take care of of the organization to take care of them. It's not just coming from a self-vested, self-interest one, but I think like what you said, Sabrina, it has to do with how much time we spend at work, how much energy we invest into our work. And I think there's also that sense of, at the end of the day, employees also want to be able to exchange their time, their talents, and their skills, right, for the remunerations that they're getting. So that expectation that an employee has of an organization to take care of them, right, is also so that they can be at their best and to be productive, right? So it's not necessarily one where employees necessarily feel entitled and expect that an organization take care, but what they're looking for is really to be able to do their best. So in the last year, when we had to kind of switch to working from home, actually a lot of employees came forward and say, hey, can we actually get support in terms of equipment, right? Whether it's equipment or internet connection, to subsidize the internet connection on mobile phones. And again, it was not coming from self-vested or self-interested, but they really wanted to continue to do their best at work, just like they had been in the office, and to be able to do it at home.
Vinod, what are your thoughts?
I think definitely there's some level of expectation. I think where I struggle is everybody's expectation is slightly different. So some people want a work from home setup. Some people want free lunches on Friday. Some people want more social activities. Some people want less social activities. Like it's really hard for an organization to kind of cater to everybody's kind of requests, and all this, mind you, during a time where a lot of businesses, including ourselves, were really struggling to find our feet, where the rug had been pulled from under us, right? So it was challenging to kind of navigate through, but we tried to do what we could within the resources that we had to help do this. But I would say there was some sort of expectation. I don't know whether everybody's as altruistic as Joyce claims, but yeah, definitely see a growing sort of expectation to take care of it. Yeah.
No, I mean, it must have been a hard time as well, because it's obviously a time where people need extra support, right? But at the same time, the business also has its own objectives, and it has to also make ends meet, right? And look at the bottom line. So how do you then balance that? And how should corporations or organizations be viewing I guess well-being support in general, right? Is it supposed to be is it a cost center? Is it a profit center? Maybe I'll direct this to Anita. What do you think?
Actually, I'm just gonna maybe talk a little bit about why I decided to go into corporate well-being, because before this, I used to work in a hospital and a social enterprise where it was all about individuals taking care of their well-being. And working in that setting, I realized that a lot of individuals actually don't know how to take care of their well-being, and they don't seek help until they're in a really, really not so great state. And that's when I realized that, well-being is for everybody. And I think companies are best placed to take care of their employees' well-being. And that's how I started to get involved in MindFi and wanting to help organizations take care of their company's well-being. So I think nowadays companies, with the maturity of the workforce, companies need to really take care of the employees' holistic needs. Otherwise, employees, maybe they move around, maybe they're not so motivated. They need to feel like it's a good fit for them and that a company cares for them. And I think taking care of well-being is one way of making the employee feel like the company is a good fit. The company is a place that they find purpose and meaning in. And so I think, it's two ways. If the employee's well-being is taken care of, they feel a sense of loyalty to the company. If the company takes care of the employee, they feel the employee feels connected to them. So both parties need to work together for well-being.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Joyce, Vinod, do you have anything else to say about this? Any other thoughts that are coming up for you? because otherwise I have many other questions.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Okay, so so obviously, we've brought Vinod and Joyce into this room from MoneySmart and Grab Financial Group, and we really want to find out more about what exactly have your organizations done, or what have you done to help support your teams during these times. Joyce, why don't you go first?
Yeah, happy to do so. So I'm actually in the people operations team at Grab, and I've just personally been super amazed by all the things that the POPs team at Grab has brought on. And I think it's been at all levels, right? I think we've constantly tried to look at our policies, and how they apply to Grabbers in this new world, right? And on the other hand, I think since the breakout of COVID, we have actually brought on a whole slew of resources to our employees, whether it's to take care of their own well-being or whether it's to support managers to look out for their team members, right, in this new way of working. So there's been a lot of resources. There's been webinars and Zoom-binars, and even just learning content. So I think it's been maybe a long period, almost a year now, of just online resources. And I think people are also starting to feel like, okay, I'm zoomed out, right? It's just too much online. And so I think we've also realized how important it is to be very, very flexible and adaptable to every situation, because really there is no one policy that will work for the entire organization. Situation on the ground is very, very different and very flexible. And I think it's just really been about enabling the learning of everyone in the organization to be at the same, I guess, level of knowledge and awareness about ourselves, how the world is changing, about our work, right, through good resources that are available to us. And then also being able to practice that, right, keeping to the BAU policies that we have around performance, management, and so on. So there's been a lot that we have done at Grab for employees.
What's the biggest thing that you've been, proud of, initiative-wise?
So I think for me personally, I found actually the content and webinars about understanding one's own energy really, really helpful. We had a series of that, and it's really to look at, a person's, your own energy, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual, right? And I think that has been a game changer for me and my team, right? To the extent that when we do get together, right, everyone's encouraging check-ins, right? But then I think some managers also have the nervousness to say, what exactly do I say to my team when we're all on Zoom, right? I think for me and my team, what we have been able to do once we had the awareness, right, about how our energy can be, right, and how it can be different, that also gives us a certain compass for us to talk about how we are doing, right, week to week, month to month, what's keeping us motivated and what's not, and then be able to extend a helping hand to one another. So I think it's creating the awareness, and I think that was a question from Patrick, right, to say whether there's still a taboo on mental health. I think if we were to get on the big forum and start talking about individual, wellness, that may be something that makes people uncomfortable. But in small group settings where the rapport, the trust is already there, or even a one-on-one, I think that's when the topic can come up and people can be vulnerable if they feel that there is some respect and safety.
Respect and safety. So I'm really curious as to how managers can create that, right? Because it's easier said than done, I think. But before we get there, I wanted to find out from Vinod, how has it been for you, and what initiatives have you been, have started at MoneySmart?
Yeah, we've really done quite a lot of things over the last 18 months. So, like I said, different strokes for different folks. Not all of these have been, runaway hits in that sense for everyone, but we try and offer a range of programs so that we hope that a few of them actually stick with different groups of people. One of the initiatives that we found very successful was an initiative called Connect 4. So once a month, this is an ongoing thing. Once a month, we connect 4 people from different departments. So it's completely random. for a 20-minute chat about anything, right? So there's no agenda. You have a meeting that's set in your calendar, 3 weeks in advance, with 3 other people that you don't usually work with. And we found that really good to build that social bonds. I mean, this really is the closest substitute we could find to water cooler chat. That kind of happens organically with people that don't necessarily work with each other. And we found that to be quite successful. And one of the surprising things particularly was being able to connect people across different geographies as well. So the remote employees or employees from our Hong Kong office felt a lot more connected to the Singapore team, which was not something we did on a regular basis sort of previously. So this was one of the good things. On a company basis, we stepped up our frequency of communication. So during the pandemic, just because we weren't able to do that level of face-to-face interactions, we decided to do fortnightly all hands to update everyone, like where are we going, how are we doing, how are we recovering from from the business impact, and what are the initiatives that we put in place, and how are we progressing against what we set out to do. So, it helped people feel a lot closer to what we were trying to achieve. And there's very clear accountability, right? So here's the plan. Next week is that, okay, this is the plan. Here's the progress update. This is going well, this is not going well, so people can really sort of know what's happening, right? And ideally were able to sort of, put up their hand and say, hey, I can contribute to this area and actually help move things along. We put in place meeting-free Fridays as well. So, as a response to people saying that they were in meetings a lot and not having enough time to actually focus and get work done. So every Friday, we blocked out everyone's calendar except myself, unfortunately, and the rest of the executive team. That has now become the day where everybody finds a free slot. But hopefully for the wider team, that's worked. We provide MindFi, so we partnered up with MindFi to offer that, and not everyone is into mindfulness and meditation, but we did have a lot of colleagues come back and really appreciate the service where they hadn't tried it before. And it was a great sort of introduction into mindfulness. And we did company-wide days off. One during the pandemic, we said, okay, whatever, this day we'll give everybody a day off so that they can sort of rest and recover and get an extra long weekend to do something that they love.
Sounds amazing, and I think a lot of us will probably be thinking, okay, I think I want to work for MoneySmart or Grab right now. What happened to, where were these initiatives in my company? But it's really, really amazing to hear all of that. And it's really interesting that you mentioned these activities of like mindfulness meditation as well. And I know, Joyce, you also practice yourself, right? And even for us, what we're seeing amongst our audience is that people have kind of warmed up to the idea of taking care of their own well-being, self-care. And now, I guess, we're more primed to actually find out what we can do about it and what kind of activities we could take up. People are also talking a bit more about therapy, So I really wanted to find out from you, Anita, what MindFi is doing to help corporations and organizations right now.
So you just mentioned mindfulness and therapy, and actually these are two of the things that we actually provide through our app. And now everybody has different needs. Everybody's going to need different things. Maybe some people want mindfulness, other people want educational content. A different group of people might want or perhaps need to talk to somebody to feel a little bit better. So MindFi actually combines all of this in our app, and we actually have tools to triage it so that we assess you and see what best suits your need, so that everybody can get kind of customized need on based on what suits them best. So we offer this to companies, and because we're app-based, it's really, really scalable, which is great if you have a big team spread across the world. So that's how we try and help companies support their employees when it comes to well-being and mental health. And we actually also try and bring that human connection together. I think Joyce was mentioning that, something you miss a lot is human connection. And Vinod mentioned that he has his monthly Connect 4 to bring employees together. We try and do the same thing via the MindFi app with a mindfulness focus to it. So we actually run app-based challenges where employees can form teams of 5 to clock mindful minutes together and to basically participate in mental health and mindfulness activities together. And this can really help to fight the stigma against mental health and build a culture of well-being within the company. It helps to facilitate and initiate conversations about well-being in the company. And we've actually found that this is really popular, and we've had, I think, close to 12 million minutes clocked based on company challenges. So I think some companies clock more than 1 million minutes each. So I think bringing employees together to do mindfulness activities has been something that we feel really proud about being able to contribute and put out there.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Anita. Okay. I'm so excited for the future of work. I mean, that's really just one good thing that came out of the past year, really. More organizations, more managers, people in general, paying more attention to taking care of themselves, whatever that may be, however that may be. All right, so I wanted to kind of build upon a couple of ideas that we talked about earlier, and this was about creating psychological safety within teams, right? And I know, Joyce, you were talking about creating or practicing respect and creating safety within the team. And, I really wanted to get your thoughts on more practical tips on how managers could better support their teams, especially if teams or their reports are not feeling safe around them already, right? How do you create that safety there in that case?
Yeah, I think it's always easier to start from a fresh clean slate than to have to do any repair and damage control, right? Yeah, but I think in any new relationship there is, and I think relationship, there's a new relationship between maybe an employee and a manager. I think being vulnerable and authentic is always very good for building trust. And I want to touch a bit on vulnerability. I think when this term first started coming out in the corporate world, right? Some people demonstrate it by saying everything, right? And that actually causes maybe a bit more uncertainty, especially when a company is going through, certain financial difficulties and all that. So I think vulnerability really comes back to being vulnerable about yourself, right? And we've actually had to, kind of say to some managers, no, don't say all the bad news that's going on in the organization, right? When we say vulnerable, it's really about being vulnerable yourself. And again, it's not necessarily about sharing bad news, but it's about being authentic, right? How a person is feeling right now, being open to saying, I'm feeling very tired because I worked really late last night, and sharing that with an employee also helps another person see that, hey, it's okay to be human. It's okay not to be on a high all the time. It's okay not to be positive all the time, right? I think that's what we mean by being authentic, rather than saying everything with no filter. So I think first and foremost, I think being authentic actually helps to build trust in a new relationship, and being open to listening. And I think, other than connection, one of the things that we don't often have is having attention. We just get so distracted by technology, everything that's around us, the stresses, right? That we've learned to stop paying attention, whether it's to ourselves or even to another person. And so for me, I think if you think about the tips, I kind of put it in the ABC, right? Number one for me in any relationship is first to create that awareness. That's the A, right? Awareness of what's going on between me and the person, how we're communicating. Second is to be present for the person. If I've chosen to take 30 minutes out to have a one-on-one check-in with you, then I'm going to be fully here and not distracted by notifications, chat messages that are coming in. And when I'm aware and I'm present, then I can choose how I want to react or respond. So that's the C. So it's really about awareness, being present, and then lastly, choosing my response and reaction in the situation, and not letting get caught up by maybe a mistake that someone had done before, and even worrying about what's to come. So that's how I kind of break it down into the A, B, and C for myself in building a relationship or in an interaction with someone else. I think when there is already some damage control, sometimes it may be helpful if there is a bit of a rupture in a relationship between an employee and the manager. Maybe helpful to bring a third party, right? And that's where my role comes in as a business partner, perhaps to be that mediator, or even to hear things from both sides, right? Before I try and facilitate a conversation between two parties. So that's, I guess, just quick and simple tips that I use.
No, I think we just got a lot of great tips and wisdom from you, Joyce. I was just here taking notes, and it's interesting that you mentioned, vulnerability, and I also thought of the idea of authenticity. It's really, really important these days, and you're so right in bringing out the difference between not having a filter and being vulnerable and open, right? Because not having a filter may cause unnecessary panic sometimes if you're not self-aware. So it's all about awareness at the end of the day. I mean, it starts from there. Vinod, do you have any thoughts around that?
One of the exercises that we do within our leadership team meetings is exercise called 1 Up, 1 Down. So before we, as a check-in before we start every meeting, everybody does a 1 Up, 1 Down. So what's one thing that has been going well for you, and what's one thing that hasn't been going well? I found it like incredibly helpful because you kind of know it's sort of a clearing exercise for everyone to be present, like firstly to have a word in as we gather as a team, and allows everyone in a team setting. I think it's a very time efficient exercise because you can kind of check in with everyone without going into too much detail, and then you can take conversations offline if that needs to be the case. One more thing that I found particularly helpful in terms of bridging that gap between people leaders and direct reports is really about the way to bridge that gap is for the leader to go first. So if the leader demonstrates vulnerability first, it's a lot easier for the report to see you as human and like also open up the same way. It's a very different experience to say, hey, you can be vulnerable with me, but I'm not going to be vulnerable with you, right? So, points around being tired or being fatigued or wanting to take a break, these are all, very human, and it's okay to share. And for me, the other thing that I share with my team as well is usually what's on my mind. So at the end, I mean, we have a structure around some of the business updates and reports and stuff, but what usually helps people connect with me is like, hey, here are all the things that I'm currently concerned about, and this is what's on my mind. It just makes me seem more human and relatable.
You
and it's
are
not
human,
it's not all numbers.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you're so right. It has to start with us, right? We have to, be comfortable enough in our own skin to share with others what we're feeling. And in sharing, we don't have to say everything. Just exactly. Enough. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good starting point. Okay. All right, so I'm aware of the time, and I do have one last question before we can jump into the Q&A. We have a few questions also lined up. So the last question for everyone, and we can kind of keep it short and go around our little circle here, is how do you find calm for yourself? And can I start with Anita?
Yeah, how do I find calm for myself? I think I have a little bit of a yoga practice I've been doing for years. So finding that mind-body connection where I'm disconnected from electronic devices is a really nice way of finding calm for myself. I think the mind-body connection and separation from electronic devices gives me a sense of inner stillness.
Thank you, Anita. Joyce, your turn.
Yeah. I think many people tell me that I'm calm, but I'm not always like that. In fact, I think people also use the word kanchong spider to describe me. So, in between that anxious mode as well as the calm mode, I think what I do to break that connection is really to take 3 deep breaths. And I think having practiced mindfulness, I realized that just taking 3 deep breaths really helps me to connect with my body, like coming back to just myself, right? And just paying attention to my breath helps me to be present in the moment. So that's how I find calm in the midst of intense days.
Sounds
My
good.
my response not so elegant as the rest of you. I go to the fridge and I take out a can of beer and I just chill and unwind. So that's how I
Very
find
nice.
calm.
Oh, we share a common
Yeah,
interest.
yeah.
I like going,
Yeah.
not the beer, but I like going to the fridge as well.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we have quite a few questions from our audience right now. So let's start with this one. So this question is from Anna, and this is directed at Anita. So, okay, further to your comment about your transition to the corporate space, in what ways do you see corporates measuring their current state of worker well-being, and how are they determining the best course of action to take to support them?
That's a great question, Anna. So I think traditionally the employee engagement survey has been how companies assess their employee well-being. And we have been trying to find a different, perhaps more effective way to do it, because I think employee engagement surveys typically tend not to be very accurate. I think they have a reputation for not being answered honestly, or employees not enjoying doing it. So in the MindFi app, we actually have something called the Wh05 Assessment. It is a screening tool by the World Health Organization that measures levels of well-being, and it's also a screening tool for depression. So what we do in the app is we try and get our users to do this assessment every 2 weeks. And based on it, we actually get an overall picture of what the well-being levels in the company looks like. Perhaps in one particular company, people are not sleeping enough. Perhaps in another company, people are feeling very energized and refreshed. So we can see how the overall state of well-being is looking like, and we can also screen for depression risk, depression. So we can have access to both the negative areas of mental health as well as the more positive end of the spectrum. So I think that this is something that moving forward can actually be very valuable to companies to get a little bit of these insights and analytics on what the state of well-being in the company is. Sorry,
Joy,
is the question still up? Did I answer everything?
I think we're good.
Yeah, but yeah, so based on these results, you can kind of decide what you want to do. Do you want to have webinars to address certain issues? Do you want to provide resources? All right, that's it for my answer.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. So the question is, okay, what can corporations in Singapore do to normalize mental health checkup and commence initiatives for employees to go for counseling or see a psychiatrist before it becomes serious, and not where did it go? And not have the negative taboo or stigma. So how can we overcome the mental health stigma and encourage employees to do something about their mental health? Maybe Joyce, or okay, whoever is ready. Or Vinod.
I'll give it a try. So I think there has been a lot more awareness about mental health, and with the awareness, I've also seen people being, I guess, interested in where to find resources. How do they get help? And so years ago, when I started working, in HR, and I talked about employee assistance programs, people were oblivious, ignorant of it. Right, this was more than 10 years ago, right? Nowadays, when I tell grabbers about grabber assistance program, which is actually the same thing, there's a lot more interest to find out more, right? So I think first and foremost, to the point of like over communication that Vinod talked about. In the times of uncertainty, we may want to over communicate, and it's about putting it out there to say, hey, these are the resources that you have available, whether it's a form of employee assistance program or an app that the company encourages people to think about. And the thing that I like about mobile apps is that it makes it very personal, right? It's something that you can use anytime, anywhere, and that usage is only for it's really to the individual. Nobody gets to know about it, because even in an employee assistance program, there can be some skepticism about, oh, who's going to see the data, who has access to it. Yeah, so I think it's about over communication, sharing with people what resources are available, right? And giving people different platforms, different resources for them to avail to. And for me, at least as somebody in HR, utilization rate is the last thing I use to test whether a program is successful or not, right? That's just my personal opinion. I can't say that that's true, but I think knowing that the resources available, and knowing that if it's something that I am in need as an individual, that I can use it, and that's something that the company provides for me, I think that is already a good foundation, right? To supporting employees, and creating that level of awareness, such that when the need comes up, they will know where to go.
Yeah, so over communication. Yes. All right. So let's go to our next question, and maybe this is for Vinod. So, okay, hello panelists. I would like to know how virtual onboarding has been like for your respective team or company, and what are the initiatives you have created to make new employees feel welcomed and have sufficient attention and training in the virtual setting. Vinod, how has it been for you at MoneySmart?
Good question. It's been tough. I mean, I think we've had a good number of people join in the last 18 months who have not really spent, maybe more than a day or two with their colleagues. So I think it's extremely challenging. We have our sort of typical onboarding program. We just virtualized it, made sure there are more checkpoints to ensure that the communication is kind of flowing through. Something that there's a lot of like osmosis that happens when a new employee joins a company, right? That you just kind of pick up the culture, the vibe by sitting next to your fellow colleagues. So a lot of that is really lost by doing things virtually. So there's only so much you can do to kind of bridge the gap. But I think just being very clear about what are the objectives of the onboarding program, and having frequent checkpoints to make sure that people feel, to the extent possible, like they're getting it and they are being onboarded as best as possible.
Yeah, it's a very strange time, I think, to start as a new hire anywhere. Anita, I see you're laughing. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I just hear from so many friends that they have started new jobs and have a hard time making friends in the workplace.
Yeah.
So the interesting,
you gotta be creative nowadays.
The interesting trend that I'm seeing that maybe is starting to emerge in the last couple of months is the flip side of that is people are also kind of sick and tired of same old. So ironically, they want a change, and then they end up joining a company where they don't know anyone, and that starts the whole new cycle
whole new
again.
set
So
of
there's a lot of movement in the people space for sure. People are just they just want something fresh, and then they just have to I guess live with their choices. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so I think one last question, and I think this is quite a big one and an important one. So the question is, how can we assert ourselves and define boundaries for well-being when a hierarchical culture already exists in the team? So for instance, sharing about the effects of burnout or unhealthy interactions. The effects of burnout or unhealthy interactions on work performance doesn't help to change a culture. Anita, this one is for you, because in our post you said boundaries you mentioned boundaries were important. So
Yeah, I think that they're really important. I'm looking at this question, and I get the sense that this question comes from an employee rather than maybe somebody who creates change in an organization. So I think that's a lot harder. I think if the organization wants to support its employees, that's one thing. But I think as an employee who wants to feel supported by an organization, I think perhaps the first step is to see if you feel a sense of psychological safety within your team. Are there people you can talk to? Perhaps you can start by creating boundaries within your own life, rather than requiring the company to perhaps create changes in the culture. So start small, start from yourself, perhaps a separate physical space for your work and your living area. It could be, even if you don't have a lot of space in your home, it could be perhaps a little corner that you use for nothing other than your work, even if it's just a desk. Perhaps creating rituals to start your workday and end your workday. And perhaps it's also about maybe saying no or communicating clearly that there are certain pockets of time that are untouchable and are sacred to you. So I think if, as an employee, if you feel like there's only so much you can do to change your workplace culture, start small, start from your own physical and time space, and set boundaries there. And also, in the meantime, find a way to see if you can talk to your manager at work. But we can all start from our own personal space. I think that's where it always begins.
That's really important to start with ourselves. Joyce or Vinod, would you like to share anything about that?
I think just to add on, typically if your managers are not supportive, usually the people team is. So just bring it up to the people team to raise it.
Not for Joyce.
People like Joyce. Yeah. That's what they're there for. So exactly. So usually there's some sort of escalation opportunity if it's required. So that would be my other sort of piece of advice.
Are there any policies or any practices at Grab with regards to practicing or drawing boundaries?
I think not specifically drawing boundaries, but definitely in place in terms of ensuring a workplace that's free from harassment and discrimination. I was just reflecting as we talked about this, right? I think as we encourage people to speak up, to share, to be authentic, and to be vulnerable, there is also a need for us as leaders, as managers, as workers, to be ready to listen as well. I think that sentiment of being brave enough to speak up, and also being open and humble enough to listen to certain constraints that an organization might have, right? Or certain pressures that are within a team or on a specific manager. I think that flow of being open to speak up, being open to listen, really aids, effective, working relationships and collaboration. So I think it really, takes two hands to clap. Yeah, but I really like answer about setting boundaries, starting with self first.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for today. I'm aware that we've come to the end of our talk very quickly. And I just wanted to do a final round of check-in with ourselves and share, maybe all of us can share 2 words about how we're feeling right now. And I think I'll go first. So my 2 words would be relieved and calm. I was kind of getting very excited about this conversation today. How about you, Joyce?
I feel very enlightened. I'm very thankful for the participation for everyone, and I feel like I've learned a lot from the participants here through their questions. So very enlightened and very grateful.
Hey, those were my 2 words as well. So enlightened and grateful. Yeah.
I'm also using Joyce's word enlightened, just because I feel like I've learned so much from this conversation, and also from the questions directed at me. It forces me to think a little bit about perhaps things I haven't thought about. So enlightened and also grateful.
Yeah, beautiful. That's the theme of our talk today. So thank you, everybody. Right now, we'll just share our screen with you. And so if you'd like to know more about MindFi, our very, very amazing partners today, and learn more about their employee well-being solution that builds mentally resilient workforces and great corporate cultures, you may scan this little QR code for a free 1-month premium access to MindFi. And we'll also be sending it to you in your emails tomorrow. So yes, thank you very much again for joining us. And we'll be very, very happy to see you again for another talk in the future. All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to hang out for a few seconds because I see a lot of thank you.